step aside, now!
Lower your voice. The detector didn't alert. State your reason.
You're being selected. Move!
Selection requires cause. Identify your policy.
It's a random check. Cooperate immediately, now!
Officer.
Sir, step over here.
TSA supervisor Henry Smith honestly believed he was protecting national security. The moment he saw a black man in a Navy SEAL dress uniform walking toward the security checkpoint at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, every biased reflex inside him screamed that it couldn't be legitimate. In his head, it was stolen valor. Fake uniform, fake medals, maybe a terrorist hiding behind military appearance. So he decided a full tactical detention was justified. Code red alert, backup units, armed response, the whole thing. Smith had spent 19 years with TSA building what he proudly called instincts for spotting threats, and he trusted those instincts more than paperwork, more than procedure, more than common sense. But when he intercepted Lieutenant Commander Ruben Iguay, a decorated Navy SEAL carrying official Pentagon travel orders and wearing a chest full of medals, including the Navy Cross for Valor Under Fire, Smith made a catastrophic miscalculation. What he didn't know was that Iguay had just returned from a classified 8-month deployment in Yemen. And what Smith also didn't understand was that everything that happened next was being documented from every possible angle. 14 different cameras across the terminal, 47 civilian phones, and 6 body cameras on responding officers. The same surveillance systems meant to protect travelers would become the evidence that ultimately sent Smith to federal prison and cost the government $22.7 million. It was December 22nd, 2 days before Christmas, and DFW was chaos. 247,000 passengers moving through terminals, families racing for connections, soldiers traveling home for the holidays. Terminal D's checkpoint processed 89 travelers per minute during peak hours. Thousands of witnesses stood under hundreds of cameras, recording everything in sharp detail. It was the worst place imaginable to commit a civil rights violation, and the best place possible to prove one. Lieutenant Commander Ruben Iguay had been born on Chicago's South Side to Nigerian immigrant parents who sacrificed everything for the American dream. His grandfather, Samuel Iguay, served in Korea with segregated army units and earned a Bronze Star while fighting for a country that didn't fully accept him. His father, Emmanuel, deployed to Desert Storm as a Marine gunnery sergeant. In the Iguay family, military service wasn't just a job. It was a sacred tradition passed through generations. Ruben enlisted at 18, determined to test himself beyond every limit, and completed BUD/S, the brutal 6-month Navy SEAL selection program with 75% dropout rate, graduating at the top of his class. For 14 years, he served in one of the most elite special operations units in the world. He completed 3 combat deployments, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, missions so classified that even his family often didn't know where he was or what he was doing. His Navy Cross, the second highest valor award in the Navy, came after an ambush in Syria where he carried 2 wounded teammates across 400 meters of open ground under enemy fire, then went back again and again to retrieve more, saving 6 lives. Shrapnel still remained in his body. Now, after 8 months in Yemen, he was finally coming home. His 7-year-old daughter Amara believed he was still deployed. His ex-wife Denise had arranged a surprise reunion. Iguay wore his dress blues with every medal he had earned because his Pentagon travel orders required it. He never imagined that uniform would make him a target. Henry Smith, meanwhile, had built a 19-year TSA career on what he called instincts. His supervisors called it proactive screening. His co-workers had another name for it. Behind his back, staff at Terminal D called him the profiler. Everyone knew exactly which passengers he flagged. Everyone knew the pattern, and everyone stayed quiet. The numbers later told the story. Over 3 years, Smith personally flagged 847 passengers for enhanced screening, and internal data obtained during discovery showed 89% were people of color, black men traveling in business attire, brown families with American passports, anyone who didn't match Smith's mental picture of a legitimate traveler. He had been named in 31 formal complaints alleging racial profiling and discriminatory treatment, yet not a single complaint led to meaningful discipline. Supervisors praised his vigilance while quietly settling one lawsuit for $45,000 under a confidentiality agreement that buried the evidence. Internal email showed managers were aware, One message said, Henry flags a lot of passengers, but his instincts have caught contraband before. Let him work. Another, responding to a discrimination complaint, read, Smith operates within discretionary guidelines. No action required. The system protected him for almost 2 decades. Smith also developed a particular obsession with what he called stolen valor cases. He believed he could spot fake military credentials instantly, especially when worn by minorities. Over 5 years, he had stopped 14 black service members, demanded extra verification, questioned their patriotism, and found none fraudulent. He had never once subjected a white service member to the same scrutiny. On December 22nd at 2:47 p.m., Terminal D's checkpoint was a river of travelers weaving through rope lines. Families juggling bags and children, business travelers staring at phones, overhead cameras recording from multiple angles, audio systems capturing every conversation. Sunlight poured through huge windows, making the footage crystal clear. Smith stood at his elevated supervisor station, scanning passengers with practiced suspicion. His eyes locked onto a figure moving to priority line. A black man in Navy SEAL dress uniform, deep navy blue fabric, gold insignia, ribbons, and a chest full of medals catching the light, the unmistakable Navy cross hanging below rows of service ribbons. Iguay walked with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned every decoration. Smith's jaw tightened. The checkpoint audio captured his words perfectly. No way that's real. He stepped down from his station, something he rarely did, and moved toward the lane. Iguay approached the document check podium with Pentagon orders in hand and his Navy ID ready. Everything by the book, everything legitimate. Smith intercepted him before the screening agent could process his credentials. I'll handle this one. He blocked the normal lane, forcing Iguay to stop. I need to see your identification, military credentials, and travel authorization. Iguay remained calm, professional, composed like a man who had faced enemy fire without flinching. He handed over his Navy ID, passport, and official Pentagon travel orders, complete with authentication stamps and a verification phone number. Smith studied each document, hunting for flaws. There were none. The ID was genuine, the passport valid, the orders authentic, sealed, and verifiable. Any reasonable officer would have cleared him. Instead, Smith's face hardened. These look forged. High quality, but forged. I'm calling for backup. He grabbed his radio and spoke loud enough for dozens of travelers to hear. Code red. Terminal D checkpoint. Possible stolen valor. Suspected forged military documents. I need armed response immediately. The code red triggered an instant reaction. Within 90 seconds, 6 DFW airport police officers converged at the checkpoint, hands on holstered weapons. Faces tense, adrenaline rising. Travelers backed away. Parents pulled children close, and the orderly line dissolved into chaos. 8 overhead cameras captured everything in high-definition clarity. On the ground now, the lead officer commanded, his body cam recording the view straight ahead. Lieutenant Commander Ruben Iguay stood motionless in his uniform, hands already raised, medals glinting. He dropped to his knees slowly, deliberately, like someone trained to survive hostile situations, then lowered himself face down onto the cold tile. The Navy cross pressed into the floor, ribbons scraping against the ground. 6 officers surrounded him with weapons drawn, as if he were a terrorist. Smith stood back, arms crossed, watching with satisfaction. His voice carried across the checkpoint. Stolen valor, possible terrorist threat. We caught him trying to board with forged military documents. The travel orders lay scattered, the Pentagon verification number clearly visible on authenticated letterhead. Not one officer called it. Passengers recorded everything. At least 47 civilian videos were later collected, capturing humiliation from every angle. A black man in full military dress uniform handcuffed on an airport floor 2 days before Christmas, while hundreds watched in shock. Officers, Iguay said calmly, voice steady despite pressure on his back. I am Lieutenant Commander Ruben Iguay, United States Navy Active Duty, SEAL Team 4. Those documents are authentic. Call the Pentagon number on my orders. They will verify. Nobody called. 3 miles away in the arrival's terminal, 7-year-old Amara held her mother's hand, bouncing with excitement. The flight board showed her father's plane had landed 40 minutes earlier. Any moment he would walk through the doors. "Daddy's coming," she whispered. "He's really coming home." Meanwhile, Iguay was taken to a windowless detention room. 10 by 12 feet, gray concrete walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, and a corner camera with a blinking red light recording everything. Audio captured every word. Iguay sat in handcuffs for 4 hours and 17 minutes. Smith entered periodically, and each visit was documented. His questions weren't investigation, they were accusations. "Where did you get this uniform? Who made these documents? What organization are you working with?" Iguay repeated with measured patience. "Call the number on my Pentagon orders. They will verify my identity in minutes. I am an active duty Navy SEAL. I have the highest security clearances in the military. This can be resolved with one phone call." Smith replied in damning clarity. "Anyone can print fake documents. Anyone can buy a costume. I've seen this before. You people think you can just put on a uniform and nobody will question it. You people," the words hung in the air, recorded forever. Iguay's phone was confiscated. He couldn't call his command or contact Denise to explain why he hadn't appeared. He couldn't tell his daughter that Daddy was coming, just delayed. 3 hours into the detention, Amara was crying in the arrivals terminal. Every other passenger had come through. Her father wasn't there. Denise fought panic, calling Ruben again and again, straight to voicemail. Inside the detention room, Smith finally ran Iguay's credentials through a federal database. The results should have ended everything. Classified flags, restricted warnings, clearance indicators only real high authorization personnel would have. Any competent officer would have recognized it as proof. Instead, Smith panicked and called the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. "I have a suspected terrorist in custody at DFW," he reported, voice recorded. Black male with sophisticated forged military documents and what appears to be a fabricated classified identity. He's got the whole system fooled. "I need immediate federal intervention." The FBI agent who took the call, Samuel Richardson, a 15-year veteran, asked one simple question. "Did you call the Pentagon verification number on his travel orders?" Silence. "Did you attempt standard military credential verification before detaining him for 4 hours?" More silence. Richardson called the Pentagon himself. Verification took 11 minutes. Lieutenant Commander Ruben Iguay, SEAL Team 4, Navy Cross recipient, traveling on official orders after an 8-month classified Yemen deployment, one of the most decorated special operators in the U.S. military. Richardson's voice turned cold. "Release him immediately, and don't let anyone involved leave that airport." Richardson arrived within 40 minutes, still wearing the Marine Corps ring he'd earned decades earlier. He understood service and sacrifice, and he understood exactly what had been done. The detention camera captured his entrance and the controlled fury on his face when he saw a decorated Navy SEAL still in handcuffs, uniform wrinkled, medals askew. "Take those off now," he ordered. This man is a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy. He has a Navy Cross. He has clearances higher than anyone in this building. And you've kept him in cuffs for over 4 hours because you couldn't make a phone call. Smith stammered. "The documents look suspicious. I was following protocol." Richardson stepped closer, body cam recording Smith's face. "Protocol is calling the verification number printed on official Pentagon orders. Protocol is not detaining a war hero because you decided a black man couldn't possibly be a Navy SEAL." The TSA Federal Security Director arrived soon after. Patricia Holloway had overseen DFW operations for 6 years and stopped cold at the scene. Richardson told her the Pentagon had been calling for 2 hours. Iguay's command tried to reach TSA the moment they learned of the detention, but calls were ignored or redirected. NCIS knew. The Secretary of the Navy's office knew. By the time Richardson arrived, the incident had reached the highest levels of military leadership. Iguay stood when his cuffs were removed, wrists red, uniform creased from concrete and tile. One medal, a Bronze Star from Afghanistan, had been bent when officers forced him down. He straightened his ribbons with quiet dignity and said nothing, his silence louder than any argument. Richardson personally escorted him to arrivals through busy corridors as travelers stared at the rumpled dress blues and the FBI agent beside him. Amara saw him first. Exhausted from crying, she lifted her head, whispered "Daddy," and ran. Iguay dropped to his knees and caught her, holding his daughter for the first time in 8 months. Denise approached, eyes moving from his uniform to his marked wrists, knowing something was wrong. Amara touched the cuff marks and asked, her voice captured on camera, "Daddy, why are you wearing handcuffs?" Iguay had faced enemy fire, carried wounded teammates, endured resistance training, but his daughter's question broke something inside him. The evidence against Henry Smith became not just strong but overwhelming. 14 official cameras, 8 checkpoint angles, 6 body cams, and 47 civilian videos collected through subpoenas and social monitoring. The videos spread online within hours. By the time Iguay was released, the hashtag Navy SEAL Detained had millions of views, and investigators compiled 23 hours of footage with clear audio. Checkpoint microphones captured Smith's first words, "No way, that's real," and radio recording preserved the code red call describing a high-threat fake uniform. Detention room audio captured every accusation, every refusal to verify, and the repeated phrase, "You people." Internal TSA communications showed no verification attempt was made for 3 hours and 47 minutes. Despite Smith having access to military credential databases and the Pentagon number printed on the orders, discovery revealed Smith's 31 prior complaints and a pattern of discriminatory enforcement. The sealed $45,000 settlement was unsealed. Emails showing supervisor knowledge became public record. Experts testified that standard military verification takes 4 to 7 minutes, and Pentagon logs confirmed their line wasn't called until Richardson intervened. 4 hours and 17 minutes into the detention, medical records added another dimension. Iguay, who served 14 years without psychological incident, was hospitalized 3 days later for a severe PTSD episode triggered by being treated like a terrorist in front of hundreds while wearing the uniform he nearly died for. His psychiatrist notes describe panic attacks triggered by airport announcements, nightmares of being face down on cold tile, while his daughter waited for a father who never came. The FBI opened a formal civil rights investigation within 72 hours. Richardson assembled a 12-member team and collected evidence from every source. The DHS Inspector General launched a parallel inquiry into TSA practices at DFW, finding that Smith's 31 complaints had been systematically dismissed. Congressional attention followed within a week. Senator Eleanor Vance, chair of the Armed Services Committee, issued a statement demanding answers. A decorated Navy SEAL with a Navy Cross detained for 4 hours because a TSA supervisor decided a black man couldn't be a military hero. This wasn't security protocol. It was racial profiling under federal authority. The Navy issued its own statement defending Iguay's distinguished service and supporting investigation. Smith was placed on leave the day after the incident and terminated 3 weeks later for violating protocol. But termination was only the beginning. A federal grand jury convened 2 months later. Prosecutors presented evidence of willful civil rights violations, not mere negligence, pointing to footage, audio, pattern evidence, and refusal to make a simple call. Henry Smith was charged under 18 U.S.C. Section 242 for deprivation of rights under color of law, along with false imprisonment and conspiracy to violate civil rights. 3 other TSA agents were charged as co-conspirators for participating and staying silent. The responding airport police were cleared. They acted on a reported terrorist threat fed to them by Smith. Investigators also found systemic failure. TSA had no meaningful accountability for profiling complaints, and the sealed settlement was designed to prevent pattern evidence from emerging. 14 months later, the trial began in Dallas with packed galleries and national attention. Iguay testified on the second day, wearing the same dress uniform. The bent Bronze Star had been replaced, but everything else remained, so the jury could see exactly what Smith saw and dismissed. Video evidence played on 6 synchronized screens for 47 minutes. Smith's interception, the dismissal of documents, the code red, the armed response, the decorated SEAL force aground, medals pressed into tile, and Iguay's calm voice repeating his identity, ignored each time. When it ended, jurors cried openly. Amara testified via closed circuit due to her age. "Now 8. She said, I thought my daddy was dead, and explained how seeing marks on his wrists made her think he was a criminal. My daddy is a hero. Why did they hurt him? Navy commanders testified about his heroism. Public testimony alone was enough to show 3 deployments and 6 lives saved under fire. Smith's defense claimed protocol and suspicious documents, citing experience. The prosecution dismantled it. Protocol requires verification calls, database checks, and constitutional respect, not detaining citizens for hours based on skin color. Experts testified on profiling and implicit bias, explaining the statistical impossibility that 89% of targets being people of color happened by chance. 14 additional victims testified. Black businessmen pulled from lines. Brown families subjected to invasive searches. An Indian-American surgeon detained despite valid credentials, showing a consistent pattern. The most devastating evidence remained Smith's own recorded words. "No way that's real, you people," and the meaning beneath it. No way a black man could be a SEAL commander. The prosecution played the audio repeatedly in closing. The jury deliberated 4 days, reviewing 23 hours of footage, recordings, and pattern evidence, then returned guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. Judge Raymond Foster said Smith swore an oath to protect travelers, but instead used his position to humiliate and detain citizens based on skin color, detaining a war hero because prejudice told him a black man couldn't be a SEAL. Smith was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. His co-conspirators received 18 to 24 months. A separate civil lawsuit against TSA and DHS followed, and government attorneys knew the evidence was indefensible. Settlement negotiations began before the 3rd week ended. The final number shocked the nation. $22.7 million, $12 million in compensatory damages for trauma, medical costs, lost wages, and long-term harm, plus $10.7 million in punitive damages to force systemic change. It became the largest TSA-related civil rights settlement in U.S. history. Reforms went beyond money. New military verification protocols requiring calls to Pentagon authentication lines within 15 minutes of any credential question, mandatory anti-profiling training for supervisors with annual recertification, overhauled complaint review with independent investigators, and an oversight board for TSA discrimination complaints with authority to recommend termination and criminal referral. The system that buried 31 complaints would not operate that way again. Iguay used part of the settlement to establish the Iguay Foundation for Veterans Dignity, providing free legal support to service members facing discrimination in airports, workplaces, and communities. In its first 2 years, it assisted 847 veterans, recovering over $12 million in settlements and judgments. Iguay testified before Congress 3 times in dress uniform, describing what happened and demanding change. His testimony helped accelerate passage of the Veterans Airport Dignity Act, which codified many reforms into federal law. The case became required training for TSA supervisors nationwide. New hires watched the footage in their first week. Hearing Smith's assumptions, his refusal to verify, and his words, learning what happens when bias overrides protocol. At the press conference launching the foundation, Iguay stood beside Amara, now 9, and when asked what she wanted people to know, she said, "My daddy is a hero, and now he helps other soldiers who get treated badly. My daddy fights for everyone." Iguay returned to active duty after medical leave and was promoted 6 months later, continuing his career despite the trauma. The footage from that December afternoon lives on in law schools, police academies, and civil rights archives, used to teach constitutional law and demonstrate bias. 14 cameras captured what once was denied. 8 terminal cameras, 6 body cameras, 47 civilian phones. Angles so complete there was no dispute about what happened. In another era, Smith's word might have outweighed Iguay's and the case could have been buried like the other complaints. But the cameras were rolling. Technology meant to protect security personnel became the evidence that held them accountable, proving body cameras work both ways. And that in an age where every traveler carries HD video in their pocket, discrimination happens in front of witnesses who do not forget. Henry Smith now serves his sentence as a convicted felon, stripped of pension and barred from federal employment. His name became synonymous with unchecked authority and racial bias. Commander Ruben Iguay continues to serve the nation that nearly broke him. His foundation has helped hundreds. His testimony changed law, and his daughter now understands her father's heroism extends beyond the battlefield. The case was brutal, but it proved something permanent. When bias takes control, footage can expose it, law can punish it, and accountability can finally happen.